Silverton.
Seth Silverton and Jack Churchill, Mad Jack Churchill, joining you for a Friday night of rampant hilarity. Jackie boy, long day in the car for me. Spent about 3 hours traveling to see various locations of a business that I'm brokering today. That's fun. We'll wait for people to catch on, see if anybody can grab the show. And I tell you what, while we're waiting for people to log on, I will grab the link from YouTube and share it on both of our walls. How's that sound?
That's good. You know what we should do? We should get one of those automated telephone callers and call everyone we know on Facebook at 8:00 just to remind them.
That would be really fun.
Do you think that would piss people off?
No, I think it would be fantastic. I don't see why that would be a problem at all. I think that's exactly the kind of thing that we should do. You know, I think that's exactly the kind of thing that I think that's what people are looking for. That's the kind of entertainment that people are looking for, Jack, where you have to remind them, that you beg them to watch. That people want to be begged,
They do, huh?
Yeah, they really do. So I'm driving. Oh, you're sharing your screen. Okay, perfect.
Well, I'm trying, but I don't see anything on it.
Well, here it comes. It's coming up now.
Yeah, no, that's because the monitor's so wide.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay.
I was driving back from Augusta just now, and the meeting wraps up, and I'm at the guy's office, which is also his home, and beautiful log cabin in the middle of Augusta, and just a really nice business. And I looked down at the clock and I said, "Oh shit, it's about 6:20," and I got there. I got there at 1:00, and we've just been driving and walking and talking about this deal for a solid 5 hours. And if you've ever dealt with a client for 5 hours straight and the client's got a lot on the line, it's kind of like, you want to make sure that you're doing everything for the client. So it's an exhausting, kind of process. But I look at the clock. Oh shit, I'm doing a show at 8:00. I better hightail it down Route 17. So I hightailed it down Route 17. I have no idea how much gas I have in the tank, metaphorically speaking, for this evening, but I will give it my best.
Do, Seth. Do we have anyone yet?
Well, we had one. We lost one.
Oh.
So it's got to be the bathrobe that did it.
I think so. So let's talk about our favorite person, DeJoy.
Man, that guy.
Did you see him on television?
Was he trying to save his job or something like that?
He was asked about giving money to his employees in compensation for them contributing to Trump. And he kept saying he was insulted by the question.
Really? Well, I think the FBI is insulted by the action.
I know. These guys have huge fucking cojones, man. I have to tell you.
Have you ever seen a more snarling visage than DeJoy?
Yeah, he's
the worst human being you've ever seen.
Yep. Yeah, he's a very unattractive human being.
Yeah, I mean, inside and out. I had a friend, Joan and Eric Knight. Eric Knight was a music arranger, a Broadway music arranger, very famous music arranger for Broadway. And Joan and Eric had been friends with Rodney Dangerfield since the 60s. And Rodney Dangerfield used to have a phrase, "She was ugly, all right, inside and out. She was ugly to the bone."
These guys really are. They really are. And you see, Matt Gaetz also seems to have done a Manafort. He's being investigated for obstruction of justice by calling that girl, that witness.
You know, when the cat's out of the bag and you have nothing to lose, and you start, kind of doing desperate things, people get desperate, Jack. People just start to freak the fuck out. And I think that's what's happening to Matt Gaetz. It's certainly what's happening to Donald Trump. And I guess we'll get to that in a few minutes. But Matt Gaetz is,
do you think he'll get an ankle bracelet like Manafort with little plastic hearts on it?
Well, I was watching an interview on Lawrence O'Donnell, I think. One of the guys from Harvard Medical School, one of the guys from Harvard Medical School's psychiatric division. I worked with these people when I worked for the company that did business with McLean Hospital, Borden McLean Cottage. And the guys are just brilliant guys. And there's, they are, to the man and woman, they are repulsed by Trump. But what happened was the guy came on the air and said, Trump, what happens with people like this, malignant narcissists and this level of sociopath is they don't entertain the reality. They create, because they're delusional. And we talked about delusion last week. He says, because they're delusional, what they do is they become more delusional as time goes on and as pressure builds. So as Trump gets closer to jail, he heard the guy from My Pillow saying he was going to be reinstated in August. And of course, it's just batshit crazy. But, you got guys like Seth Abrams on Twitter saying, now don't be so sure that it's not yet another plot for a coup. Because you have a guy that is broadcasting a date that, he wants action, and you have Maggie Haberman reporting that he's talking about it. Mm-hmm. And then you have Mike Flynn going on this crazy, panel discussion. And a guy from the audience asks about, why can't Myanmar happen here? Really? You fucking redneck idiot. Spell it.
You're talking about people getting more and more delusional. I think people like Flynn, obviously being a very authoritarian psychopath, that's an example of someone who gets more and more psychotic. It's like once he's grabbed onto this ring, he can't let go. And the only thing he can do is double down on it. He can't back out. He can't do a mea culpa. He can't do anything. All he can do is just grab tighter onto that ring. Yeah. And it makes him insane.
Well, the psychiatrist from Harvard Medical School finished the interview by saying, well, I think he's going to try and flee the country.
Trump.
Yeah.
When was this interview given?
2 nights ago.
Because you and I have anticipated that for months.
I know, but I don't know how that works mechanically.
I think when you have that much money, you can make it work mechanically.
We don't have that much money, Bubula.
We don't, but he does.
No, when I'm referring to the royal we, I don't think he does.
Oh, I think that if he could get help, he does.
What use is he further to Putin?
Well, I tell you what is useful to Putin right now is that he can point at the insurrection at the Capitol and say, look at how these people are being investigated and prosecuted.
Yeah, meanwhile, he's pulling the strings the whole time. I'm infinitely more concerned about China than I am about Russia. China is a massive economic threat and Russia is not.
Before we leave Russia, though, it's interesting what you mentioned. If Trump can establish some kind of a de facto timelining for his reemergence from the cave in August, and created enough disappointment and confusion in his followers, it could be a plot.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that, but you're 100% right. I think it could be.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm sure that the FBI is actively monitoring all of the social media sites where, you know, but, you know, you've got a desperate and disconnected from reality group of individuals who are, you know, they're also not the best educated folks in the world. I mean, you know, oh, why can't this happen? Why can't what happened in Myanmar happen here?
Yeah.
Really, did that actually just come out of your mouth, dude?
Yeah, I know. Now,
well, I mean, you know, because we're not a fucking banana republic. Try that one on for size, genius.
You know something? I had a military guy once say to me that, you know, Jack, in the military, you don't hear about it. You won't hear about it. It's really in general, it's a feeling of us versus them. We are the ones that don't get paid much. We sacrifice when there's a war. We're the ones who are on the wall. You want us on the wall. You need us on the wall. And he said that attitude in the military is pervasive. The looking down on civilians as sheep, and they're the ones that are really the creme de la creme that are saving democracy. And I felt that I was listening to a pretty good deal of truth when I heard that.
I can imagine that that's the case with the rank and file, but the officer corps of the United States military is composed of some of the finest Americans that we have, always has been.
Yep.
And it is comprised of citizen soldiers who are brilliant intellectuals. They are lateral thinkers. They're taught tactics, and they're taught to lead, and leadership by definition requires a certain type of thinking, which is not as straightforward as, you know, that's why Michael Flynn kind of never really ascended to the level that he could have given his intellectual capacity, because his worldview was completely wrong, and he was known as a problem within the Pentagon before he became, Trump was the only career path he had, Michael Flynn.
Well, I think you're being a little optimistic in your evaluation. Yes,
of Michael Flynn or the military.
No, about the military. I think, yes, these people do exist, and we tend to see them in the Joint Chiefs, Powell, for instance, and there are a number of them. I mean, Mad Dog and these people who were true patriots, right? But I think when you go down through the ranks to lieutenant colonel, major, and colonel, I think you're going to find people that are not capable of lateral thinking. And it's one of the reasons they got to where they got to. Okay.
The military is a meritocracy.
That's not true. It is, in fact, no, that's not necessarily true, Seth. The big fight in the military, if you're colonel rank, lieutenant, or full bird, is to make sure that the general's wife likes you.
Your overt cynicism, I just can't battle with it today.
I've been in the military, Seth.
Yeah, but Jack, it was 35 minutes and you got bored.
No, but all I'm saying is in fact, I think it's quite realistic. Obviously, they're military people that we truly admire, Seth, okay? But I think in general, okay, I'm just saying in general, that there is a feeling of this almost superiority.
Yeah, and the problem with the brakes that I see screeching right now are that we have a set of externalities that are going to be impossible to overcome, not the least of which is climate change. As a matter of fact, climate change is the number one driver of political chaos that's going to be coming in the future. And we're not on stable political footing now, right? So, when you introduce the chaos of climate change into that equation, that's a really bad formula. So I think what we should do is we should anticipate chaos, political chaos, not, this delusion that the guy at the White House has that that if we, that everything is policy and it's going to be okay, and as long as we achieve bipartisanship, we can save the republic. Well, no, you're not taking into consideration the facts on the ground. The facts on the ground are we've got a permanently divided population changing tremendously, very rapidly, and we have to, the only kind of political hegemony in this country in the future is going to be by the people that have been previously dispossessed of power, black and brown.
There's another side of this, Seth, and that is, given climate change, given China and their direction and their propulsion, it may be the only way the United States can survive is as a welfare state.
We don't know what work in the future looks like. We don't know what our class structure in the future looks like. The technology that surrounds us is changing it every day. So it's impossible to say at this point what it can look like.
Mm-hmm.
All I can tell you is it's not going to look anything like what it looks like now.
I agree.
And that change scares the shit out of the Trumpers.
Yep. You're absolutely right. And that's why I say it's possible, given economic competition, given the attempted takeover of the South China Sea, Taiwan, basically all of Asia, as well as the economics of Africa, the Middle East, whatever it is, that it may be that the competitiveness of the United States may cease to exist, in which case it will be forced to be a semi-welfare state.
We're still a country of ideas,
which are easily stolen. And we argue about this every show, Seth. Ideas aren't worth much when half the world is going to steal them within 5 minutes.
Right, but the worldview of the people that live here is one of leadership, and the worldview of the Chinese is one of faux authority based on theft.
It's called domination.
No, they're not dominating anything. They don't create anything. They copy things.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You keep saying about this copying things. You can dominate by copying. Look at Japan's economy in the 80s.
No, not if you cripple the people that you're copying.
No, I think the ability to copy in the future is going to be worth more than the ability to create the idea.
Well, I disagree. I think that ownership is everything. But let's move on from that because it's a boring conversation.
But China was interesting, particularly right now, because of the plethora of news items about where the virus came from.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are... A clock is going to be right twice a day if it's broken.
Right.
And yeah, congratulations, Donald. A disease that originated in China with a secretive Chinese government, as perceived by a chief executive that has a predisposition for conspiracies in the first place. Yeah, congratulations. You stumbled on one, big guy. It's possible it came from a lab. It's not likely it came.
Do you think Donald, it's seeming more and more likely the farther we get into it, do you think Donald was told that the Americans had money invested in this project?
No idea.
I wonder if he was.
I do know that Donald continues to divest himself of properties that are performing poorly. Donald's blog was, on its final day, it was outviewed by, I don't know, puppies.com. And the reason is because his his supporters don't read.
I think that's a problem. You can't deliver the message in print to them. It's got to be screaming in front of a podium on Fox News for it to reach anyone. And keep in mind that they always ridiculously overestimated the size of his crowds.
Well, I mean, when you have the power of the presidency behind you and you can threaten people with it, you can get exaggerated numbers. When you're a bloated McDonald's eating human disappointment, leading your political party circling the drain, and they don't have the. What we've learned about Republicans is that they're a collection of utter cowards,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew this because their only kind of thinking is fear-based thinking, and fear-based thinking is cowardice.
Do you think Donald wants to get into cash?
For what reason?
That's what I'm asking you.
Well, no, I think what happened is that he can't launder money through properties anymore through Russia because everybody's watching.
Yes, right, you are.
And the only way he can get cash is to sell his dwindling assets.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if it has the Trump name on it, that's branding and marketing cancer. So
interesting.
Bottom line on that one, Jack, is you got a guy who's in a desperate financial condition before he gets into desperate legal condition. And desperate legal condition is not cheap at the federal level. Like Eric Trump goes on Fox News, Sean Hannity the other day, and he's bitching and moaning about how we're getting persecuted. My dad gets tons of subpoenas every day. I'm like, really? He's getting subpoenaed daily? I had no idea.
Did you see a waitress spit in his face? Eric Trump's face?
Really?
Yes.
Take this job and shove it.
Yeah, he was at some kind of sort of high-end cocktail joint, and the waitress mumbled something about Trump and spit in his face.
You have to pay extra for that in Vegas sometimes.
Yeah. This was, I believe, in Florida. What a surprise.
Florida, huh?
Yeah.
Well, what's he doing at Hooters?
Well, that's not a high-end cocktail place.
But Florida is.
So I'm thinking Trump. Let's say Trump gets into cash for exactly the reasons that you said, because it's exactly what it is. He gets into cash, and rather than hide this cash in the United States like the Russians do, where does he go with it? So it can't be touched.
Belarus.
Probably a very good choice. A very good choice.
Belarus.
Mm-hmm.
Where we hijack flights like ISIS. If ISIS had an air force, they'd be Belarus.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking scumbags. Man.
Oh.
Can't you just, let me ask you a question. Aren't you just fucking exhausted by these scumbags? Wouldn't you just love to just drop a small nuke on this fucker's house and have done with it?
Absolutely.
Why are we mincing words? Why doesn't Biden just say the fucking words? Why are we dancing around?
I know.
Everybody knows. Just say the words. Mm-hmm. Say the words. Why are we bothering being bipartisan with people who are openly seditious and powerless? Mm-hmm. They lost the House. They lost the Senate. They lost the executive branch. And we're still kowtowing to them? Do you have any idea how politically emasculating that is? Mm-hmm. What the fuck are you thinking about? What are you thinking about?
Yep.
What are we waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
Drop the fucking hammer on these losers. They're begging you to put them out of their misery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why? Why are we playing political patty cake? Joe Manchin. Well, because they're going to come back into power. Joe, you're going to be dead by 30 years by the time they come back into power.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you paid attention, but black people vote now.
Heads up, Joe. Newsflash. Film at 11. Oh, how about that baseball player that got hit in the face with that?
That
Whoa.
fucker got rocked.
That was
fucker
ugly.
got rocked. Line drive.
Yeah. Boy.
You know what that was, right? You remember the movie Bull Durham?
Yes, but not that well.
That was the baseball team, the Durham Bulls.
Now you see that Manhattan DA calls Trump Organization Senior Vice President Jeff McConney, right, as the first executive to testify to grand jury in the case against ex-president.
Wow.
Do you know how quick these guys are going to flip? Do you know how quick they're going to flip in front of that grand jury? Oh,
Let me tell you a little secret about grand juries.
tell me.
You can't have a lawyer with you.
That's right.
You can't have a lawyer with you.
Do we have anybody watching?
Yeah, a couple.
Oh, good. Anybody we can identify?
Not yet.
Oh, identify yourselves, please. This is so lonely. Seth and I, it's Friday nights have become so lonely for Seth and I.
We have each other, darling. And we'll always have had Paris.
I mean, I don't even see the usual suspects, Seth.
I don't know. I don't really care. I mean, I'm tonight in particular, I am fucking toast. I really am.
I think
but I like it. Let's send out a reminder. I think we should buy some merch. Buy some Seth and Jack Show merch. Have somebody design a logo. Make a T-shirt. Have a T-shirt giveaway. I'll stand out on Route 1 in Thomaston with a T-shirt cannon, shooting T-shirts at passing Harley Davidson riders.
it's the best you're going to.
Jack, we should have a listener contest. Ready for the listener contest?
Seth.
The winner gets to design the lawn sign that I put on my lawn for the 4th of July parade.
Oh, perfect. Now, Seth, let me ask you a question. If we have no viewers, how many T-shirts do you think we're going to sell?
2. And we're not selling them, giving them away.
That's right.
Yeah.
Here's one for you, Seth, that you're going to fucking hate.
Uh-oh.
Another sign New York City is sliding back towards the bad old days. Affluent Soho area is unrecognizable after being covered in graffiti as cops struggle to deal with soaring crime rate while business owners slam it as a sign of neglect. Restaurants are closed up for good. This is Soho, my friend. This is the most visited tourist area of Manhattan.
What does that mean?
What does what mean?
What does this mean?
Soho means south of Houston.
I know it means south of Houston.
Okay.
And what does this mean for New York? If we were talking to Ben, let's get Ben on the show. Ben, if you're watching, can you call in, please? Because this, Ben and I fought about this last month.
Well, when you and I discussed this, you see New York not going under. I tend to be more pessimistic about the whole thing. And Ben, of course, because he lives there, feels even more like it's not going to happen.
He's invested.
That's true, which brings us to delusion.
I don't know why Ben would come on.
No. I was just sort of kidding. But our discussion about self-delusion is one of the most, I think, important discussions we ever had on the air. Collective self-delusion, since we're experiencing it. I
mean, live and living color, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just in real time. And it's just, I was driving back today and I was thinking to myself, this whole UFO thing, if aliens landed in Times Square and came down the ramp and started doing a jig down 42nd Street, I don't know how shocked I'd be anymore. You know, it's getting to the point where we have had our norms so disrupted that the idea of really wacky shit is completely acceptable, like right-wing scumbags storming the Capitol building on January 6th.
I agree. You're absolutely right. Our feeling for the safety of reality has been really shaken
To the core.
to the core in the last number of years, and therefore something really bizarre wouldn't really surprise us that much. I mean, how about these 6 people that were going to the Trump convention with Roger Stone? It was a church owner and his, what is it, church diet wife
Yes, it's heartbreaking.
that crashed. Yeah, I was thinking of that. Just what's that noise?
So an alert
From,
from Facebook, I think.
do you think it's Ben?
No, it's not Ben. I wish it were.
We lost Ben too. You probably said
No, he said no. He told me he wanted to. He told me that he wanted to watch the show and that I should remind him. You know what I'm going to do? I have the link copied. Let me go to chat and I'm going to send it to Ben.
do that.
I'm gonna
Provoke
send it
him.
to Ben, and I'm going to say, Ben, we're talking about the demise of. We're talking about lowering the value of your townhouse again.
Right.
You know, how would you feel about coming on?
Yes.
I know you love the idea of your townhouse being devalued more than anything. How would you feel, Ben, about coming on and talking with us about that? Is that okay? Can I ask you to do that?
Yeah, do that. Provoke him.
Yeah. So there you go, Ben. All right, Ben, I sent you the link. And if you want to join the show, we would love to have you on because it's me, Jack, and a couple of viewers. And we want to fuck with you about your real estate value. So Soho's getting covered in graffiti, huh?
Yes, and they showed a picture of a couple of the corners. I guess because I watched Soho go from nothing to everything over 20 years.
I know.
And so that to me seems so, because it was so lot of fucking da, man. I've got to tell you.
Very cyclical.
Yes.
Very cyclical. I mean, it feels like the Soho of, you know, the David Dinkins or even the New York City municipal crisis, the fiscal crisis.
Right.
You know, no garbage being picked up, no cops, overtime, no nothing. You know, it's interesting, Jack. Quality of life is the thing, and people have determined that they want to work from home. There are people who are employed by companies who want them to come back to work, and the people are saying, no, fuck you. I'm going to go work for a company because there's all sorts of jobs out there. No, I'm going to work for a company that can let me work from home. I enjoy working from home. My quality of life dictates that I should be working from home.
Right.
So, you know, my friend Justin, his daughter, really just spectacularly beautiful and brilliant daughter. She's going to live in Portland for some time. And she is going to school down there and she's looking for housing. And there are no rentals in Portland. And if there is a rental, there's a line down the block of people waiting to get into the rental. And Justin says to me, I can't house my daughter in the city in which she will be attending classes. What is she going to do? Drive an hour on the highway from Augusta to Portland every day and then back another hour? It's a 2-hour commute for her to go to classes. I mean, how is that right? It's also on the highway. That's not great. So now this guy, because he has the capacity to do so, is going to be compelled to buy a fucking condo in Portland. because the rents for a 400 square foot studio start at $1,500 a month and up.
So Seth, let me ask you this. If you say, is there a possibility that we're going to see a trend, not just in New York or anywhere else, but in the major cities, whether it's Minneapolis, Chicago, LA, of what we saw in the 50s of the flight out of the cities into suburbia? Are we going to revisit that?
Yeah. So, but the danger, Jack, is that Robert Moses, let's put a highway around the city and then conduits out to the suburbs. That worldview and philosophy and the creation of suburbia was the greatest misallocation of funds in world history.
In what respect?
In land use respect. In the respect that the entirety is based on the automobile. That you no longer have villages where people have a village center and that the village center is branched out and that people shop in the village center and it's walkable and there are parks and green spaces, etc. No, now you have places that people have to drive through and you get to a strip mall or something like this, or a larger mall, which is another misappropriation of land. And the human experience is vastly different. But there was a movie called The End of Suburbia that dealt with that. And of course, The End of Suburbia, it was predicated on the idea that peak oil was going to make vehicular transportation impossible. Well, of course, we found a way around that. And that way around that is that, we have electric cars now.
It's interesting because Sweden decades ago decided that the future was going to be small city centers scattered all around Stockholm for miles outside, where you could do anything you wanted to. In these city centers. They weren't in Stockholm. There were little miniature city centers around Stockholm.
Yeah.
The asphalt was heated. Okay, it all had Pexus piping in it. All the loading of stores and stuff was done from the outside of the center, city center. And they saw this and the city was made up of some high rises, some single units, what they call radhus, which means row house.
Yeah, this is Finland too, isn't it, Jack?
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't Helsinki built on like a series of smaller towns around Helsinki?
I'm sure it is. I don't know it that well, but Stockholm certainly is.
Like Rotomaki. No, I forget the name of the town. Jessica was born in one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So what I'm saying, Seth, is this. Now that working from home is going to become a thing, which it is, okay, thanks to COVID, and the whole process has been accelerated toward this eventuality. So let's try to envision what the future is going to be here. Obviously, nobody's going to want to live in a super big city. I mean, look at outside of New York, you have Morristown and all these places, right? Which are wonderful little places. New York is surrounded by them on every side.
Well, assuming that, and I'm working now with a company called Dynamic Grid. It used to be called Introspective Systems. It's now called Dynamic Grid. And they're doing a project for the city of Boston that does essentially this. It sets up microgrids for the city of Boston so that small communities can be energy resilient. In other words, there's not a grid that goes down and everybody's out of power. This deals with energy storage on the local basis and shared energy storage and a grid that's dynamic and intuitive and resilient and is comprised of millions of little nodes, so that any denial of service attack would necessarily have to attack each node specifically, making it impossible to do a denial of service attack on a microgrid, because it just is not cost effective.
It's almost a kind of neo-feudalism, which is interesting for protection.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. But trying to, obviously we can't predict anything, but seeing in the direction that these things could go is fascinating. I mean, remember when all the big corporations built their headquarters outside of New York, Johnson and Johnson, New Brunswick.
Yeah.
I mean, Ciba-Geigy, I mean, anybody, built there, and a lot of them around Princeton. You have these, insurance companies, and Connecticut General, who's often wherever they are, and I wonder if that trend is going to sort of accelerate. And it's wonderful for the people that work there because they didn't have to commute into New York.
Right. Did you know that Princeton houses the Woody Allen Archives?
I'm sorry?
Did you know that Princeton houses the Woody Allen Archives?
Is that true?
Yeah. Every script he's ever written that was never turned into a film is there. He continually sends them written material. He sends them stuff in boxes and boxes and boxes. And so, of course, because it's at Princeton, it's available to review. And scholars review it. And now, because of the Mia Farrow thing and the Allen versus, excuse me, Jack, I apologize. And the Allen versus Farrow miniseries on HBO, this fucking guy goes to Princeton and starts tearing apart Woody Allen's scripts that were never made. One after another, after another, after another. It's an older man and a younger woman.
Yeah, he definitely has
a fixation.
Oh, yes. But then again, a lot of artists do.
Yeah, a lot of humans do. And a lot of men do. Like, absent, like, what would you do if all you got was praise from strangers when you walk down the street, and money was not a problem for you?
Yep.
Let's imagine it was a hybrid between you and me.
Ah, I see. So you're talking about a smart, rich person?
Yeah. Can you imagine, like being Woody Allen and having everybody be a star fucker that you walk into in the street? He's in Venice with Sunyi, and they're all, Wood, yay.
Yeah.
Taking pictures of him. He's like, it's me. I'm the man from the movies. Yes. Imagine the amount of assumed power that you think you have and the shit that you can get away with. Like, why can't I do it? All these people look at me all of a sudden. What is the sickest fantasy I can come up with? What fixation of mine can't I indulge?
And you, as you start out, is this really nebbishy looking little Jewish guy, or Harvey Weinstein, who's probably the ugliest creature on the planet?
I mean, he is porcine.
Yes.
Man, porcine, and and jowly, and
Oh, just awful.
I really want to roast him and see what he tastes like.
Yeah, don't invite me over for that one, but I'm sure you do a good job of grilling him up.
Thank you, buddy. I really am quite a good cook.
We're not hearing, I know that, I can see that you post pictures of the dishes. They look absolutely wonderful.
I know. And and they're so impromptu that I'm just like, let's do this. I don't really think about it. We should, now that the thing is over, we should have you and Maggie over for a pool party, because I'm going to get the pool up and running soon.
Oh, you're going to fix the leaks?
When is Johan and Lulu getting back?
End of August.
Oh.
I went down to Cedar Works today to buy something for the kids, but they're back ordered.
Of course.
So if I ordered it now, it would come in October.
Yeah, but you might as well, because they're going to be, it'll be a forever kind of thing. They'll use it forever.
True. So that series on Netflix that I just finished, the one in Israel.
Help me with.
called Space. Black Space.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay.
It's about a school shooting in Israel.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And the main character is phenomenal. Very oblique, very quirky bit of casting,
Uh-huh.
but absolutely wonderful.
Good.
You know,
good.
a master like Gene Hackman. He's sort of a master of non-acting, which I adore.
Best ones are.
Yeah. Anyway, it's worth watching. It's called Black Space.
Allen versus Farrow. Don't watch it if you want to sleep tonight.
Is it worth seeing?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. There's no good guy in this saga.
There isn't a good guy in most sagas.
No. I mean, Mia Farrow comes off as a self-indulgent, self-involved, really stupid airhead with terrible boundaries. And Woody Allen comes off as a horrific human being.
Really?
A horrific human being. And Dylan Farrow comes off as a woman who has come to grips with the sexual abuse she suffered. And on top of that, I mean, suicidal and reacting to, and still extraordinarily traumatized as an adult. And the unfortunate thing for Dylan Farrow is she suffered this and had to go through it in the most public way that any child has ever had to go through it. So she has nothing but anxiety, and you can see it. And then when they show the videotape that Mia Farrow made of her talking about what Woody Allen did, every child psychologist that sees it was like, that's sexual abuse of a child. That's what that looks like. That's exactly what the child that's been sexually abused says. And
what's the name of the series?
Allen versus Farrow. You know, it's
okay.
On HBO, and they show it in 4 parts back to back, right? So it's like, you know, you can download it very easily. But horrific. Don't watch it if you want to sleep. So I posted on Facebook today, and of course, here in the mid-coast of Maine, we're having our own conversation about this because of Robert Indiana. And Robert Indiana apparently liked young boys, very young boys, and got in a great deal of trouble and then died. And one of his victims was just sued by the federal government for tax evasion because Robert Indiana was paying him hush money over the course of the years, and he didn't report it. He was embarrassed and he was mortified, and Robert Indiana ruined this guy's life, and he got into drugs, and he turned into, he preyed on kids that were, from poor families,
And this guy the IRS is going after him.
So the IRS goes after the guy, and they charge him, they charge him like $50,000 or $100,000 or whatever it is for money that he got as hush money. And he was mortified by it. So what's he going to do? Report it on his taxes? Yeah, this is money that I got because Robert Indiana fucked me in the ass. Anyway, long story short, I posted on Facebook a kind of a thought experiment. Hey, does the Farnsworth rid itself of its Robert Indiana pieces simply because of his past? The way people stopped working with Woody Allen because of his past? Or do we separate the artist from their work? And I was, and I thought at the time I was watching the Allen versus Farrow thing, this exact same question. And I thought, well, Caravaggio was a scumbag too. Mm-hmm. Caravaggio killed a guy in a sword fight. And any number of artists that were scumbags over a hooker, by the way, Caravaggio. And the guy got in a glancing blow, which became infected and killed Caravaggio. So on the 4th episode of Allen versus Farrow, a guy says, well, Caravaggio wasn't that much of a great guy. And I thought, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how do you separate the artist from the work? And is our culture changing? Is our culture changing to the extent that now we can't do that because we're morally repulsed, and as a result of the technocultural revolution, where you cannot hide from shit anymore?
Well,
What's on that?
the trouble is not that it's happening. The trouble is all this shit turns into trends. And people who follow trends are pretty useless to begin with. So, because they're like Republicans, they're sheep, lemmings. So, I think if you can divorce yourself from the trend part of anything, I think you'll realize that you have to somewhere allow the work to stand on its own. And I think you'd agree with that. It has to. Now, you may not let the artist stand on his own, but the work is often genius. So,
And isn't the work oftentimes the expression of a tortured mind because
of course it is.
Because it's tortured?
Yeah. Do you think that Da Vinci was a normal person?
I know for a fact Da Vinci wasn't a normal person. He was left-handed, and none of us are.
Right. So, please,
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do. Well, I am absolutely wiped out. I think I don't have anything left in the tank, Jack.
That's okay,
if
Seth.
we don't have anything else to talk about, my man, I think we can call it quits for the week. And boy, wouldn't I love to be able to start resuming our normal routine.
We're getting closer.
I know we are. But now we find out Boynton McKay is still closed and
may stay that way.
I think
it's going to
be a complaint, by the way. I heard a complaint from the town about that too. Nobody's happy about that, Jackie boy.
Of course not. It was the most popular place in town.
Yeah, people in the town are pissed.
Of course, it's a great place. Look at what the options are. They're non-existent.
And they're not good options, Jack.
They're not.
These options are not good.
And Seafolk, I think, eventually will be open, which will be some kind of a respite for us because it's such a wonderful place.
Can you give me a date certain on that, my man?
There is none at the moment, but I think it's coming sooner than later.
Didn't you tell me June? You said June, didn't you?
Yes, that's what the thinking was. Okay. But this Maggie shares a space with what's her name that runs it. Anyways, in Rockland, for massage and stuff like that. So the other interesting thing is Maggie's getting more and more involved in the Rockland scene, which I absolutely adore because Camden is turning into a rich old people's home. And it has been for years, and it's just getting worse and worse.
Turning into?
Yeah, sorry. High-end hotels. Yes, expensive real estate, expensive storefronts, no kids. That's our little town here, Seth.
I dig Rockland, man. I do dig Rockland. I think you're right. Rockland's got a really cool vibe to it, and there's nothing better than hanging out on the benches in front of ABC and having coffee and a pastry that they sell there. I mean, the baking company's dynamite, isn't it?
I know, and a lot of other places too.
Home Kitchen Cafe. Home Kitchen does breakfast, right?
Yep. Home Kitchen is great. I mean, you could name. There's a whole great list of them. Suzuki. Are you kidding?
Not for breakfast, but yes, for dinner.
Yeah. But I mean, really, if you look at Camden, man, it's a zombie. It's dead, but doesn't know it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But anyway, this Israeli series is quite good. And I'm going to eventually start the new season of Ragnarok. A very clever, naive Norwegian.
I think I may have to start that.
I would. I think you'll love the naiveness of it,
Yeah.
and also that it. Sometimes these things feel much more accessible because they aren't so slick.
Yeah.
The Hollywood slick.
Yeah.
Okay, Daddy.
All right, big boy. I'm going to go. Thank you
Good.
very much for your time, everybody. Thank you, Jack, for muddling through with me today.
Sure. And call me if you want to have coffee tomorrow.
I will, brother. We got to do it, man.
Okay, bud.
Talk to you later, pal. Bye.
Keep the faith.
You too.
I have to pay more dues in Congress because of all my identities.
Oh,